I am sitting here with Dara Quinn, an old friend of mine here in Richland, Washington, where I grew up, and kind of the place where the whole Hanford Project, Manhattan Project thing kind of evolved and stewed here during the 40s. Dara is an old friend of mine. She owns the Emerald of Siam in Richland, which is a awesome Thai restaurant, and is really doing a great job of supporting the local music scene as kind of a nightclub, concert venue. I was fortunate to play a lot of my formative early gigs there, and I'm thankful for Dara for giving me that opportunity. How long have you lived in Richland? I never actually asked you that.
Well, I moved here in second grade, 1983, so off and on for how many years? That's a lot of years.
No, we don't have to do the math.
We're not doing math. I did, spend some time in Seattle and Portland in my, young adult years, but been back here doing the music venue Thai restaurant thing for 10 plus years now.
How'd you end up out here?
Well, Dad moved us out here in 1983 to work in the nuclear industry, finding nuclear waste sites or something like that. That's what brought us here, and a lot of people we knew, most of the kids I grew up in school with are out here from that.
So you were in second grade when that happened. You probably at the time really didn't understand what
No idea.
was.
I didn't even know anything about what he really did until, a few years before he passed.
Was there a moment when you kind of realized there's something weird about this town, or there's something funny? What was that like? When did you figure that out?
Yeah, because I was involved in music like you are, and so that was what would bring me out of town as a child, as a kid, and we would go play at the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival, and be sitting around in their hub and having some food and meeting kids from other places, and we'd say we're from Hanford, and they'll be like, oh wow, do you glow in the dark? Do they know? And it's just like, at that point, and this is probably a young teen, it's just like people see this area as nuclear.
Yeah, it's funny because maybe you can relate to this too. I've always found that usually the truth about what's going on out there is somewhere between what everyone around here thinks and what the Seattle Times thinks.
Yeah, whenever I would leave town, growing up, I would hear more about here than when I lived here.
Yeah. What is the culture here like compared to other places? Do you see the whole nuclear thing kind of bleeding into your everyday life, or is it just kind of business as usual? What have you found?
Well, there's the Richland Bombers with their mascot being a mushroom cloud, and there's the atomic lanes bowling alley, and things like that. Growing up here, you're a little bit oblivious to, you don't go to it's the bombs that kills people thing at all, and it's like how my parents have a job, how we bought our house and all that. But it's just not prevalent in your consciousness is what I think, But it's really that in agriculture is the only reason why this community is even here.
Exactly. And I think that's a tension that a lot of us feel is this thing, fed us, and this is the reason we're here, and it's the reason we have such a relatively high standard of living here in the Tri-Cities. But at the same time, it's the same kind of thing that did some really destructive things.
Well, when I was in college and left here, and then you're like, I can't believe I was drinking that water the whole time, and I lived downstream from the reactor, and it's kind of things you don't think about as a kid. I mean, I wasn't really thinking about that sort of thing. We're just growing up and living life,
Yeah, I think a lot of kids around here feel the same way. I certainly did growing up here sometime later. So you kind of get to see a lot of the music scene around here, because you're kind of one of the main venues that local acts kind of get to start getting their feet wet, or even touring acts that come through, national touring acts come through, play at your venue. What's that like? What's it like getting to see that kind of up close and personal?
To go back up a little bit, when I was growing up, there was a pretty good alt and punk rock scene here. And to me, the flavor of music came from angst from kids, because there's nothing to do here, lacking culture. It's barren land.
Yeah.
And, you know, aside from drinking and partying down by the river and or going out to the sand dunes or whatever, you know, music. And a lot of the kids were latchkey kids, you know, and the parents working full time.
Yeah.
Lots of them double income out at the area or whatever, and living in town and not having, you know, an outlet. And so the music was very punk rock and angsty.
Yeah.
You know. So when I moved back here after going to college for a while and came back, and I am as in jazz and funk and different genre, coming back here and not really seeing a scene here at all, zero. And it was frustrating, and eventually it was kind of like, well, if there's no place to go, then I guess I'll make it happen.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've kind of become the musical center of the Tri-Cities. And I love it because, you know, I'm a music major and a professional musician, former touring professional musician. And so it was definitely lacking here. And so, you know, been providing it for the community, and I love it. I get my yayas out. I get to invite bands that I like.
Yeah.
You know, I get to hear jazz. I try doing my best to keep jazz alive in the area, and you know, I get to sit in with a lot of the bands that come. So I feel fulfilled doing it.
No, that's really great. That's all that matters, right? Well, Dara, thank you so much for taking some time out to hang out with me. I know you got to go probably get ready for the next show at the Emerald. Thanks for all you're doing for Tri-Cities and people like me. This is really great.